It is my absolute pleasure to introduce our final keynote speaker. And I think I probably speak on behalf of anyone who has been organising an event in Bradford over the last year and saying, Merel, you're a stalwart. Thank you so much. You coming forward. You know, you've been giving back to Bradford so much, and we really, really are appreciative, not just of your willingness to give back, but for the insights that you give us. Now, Merel, I was going to say, goeiemorgen in Val. A little bit of a Dutch Afrikaans moment there, might as well enjoy that. Honestly, I've been looking forward to this part as well. And again, just to say so much of a big thank you to Merel. She's, again, thank you. Thank you for everything for us. Merel has a very impressive history. She's an HR guru. She's been part of Medicine Without Borders, Art with as well. Medicine, yes. Currently works as the Director of People and Culture at Universal Music. I'm not even going to list all of the sectors. You've cut across several sectors, private, public, everything. I'm going to hand over to Merel so we can just listen to you. Thank you so much.
Well, unlike what Nick just said, no singing and dancing, no dance routines for me. I do understand the confusion because, as you heard from Sudan, I work at Universal Music currently, an organization quite known for its artistry, songs and dancing. I mean, I don't have to mention Taylor Swift, but yeah, she's one of the Universal stars. I don't want to elaborate further on the introduction, but as Susan said, before joining Universal, I worked at Doctors Without Borders, Médecins Sans Frontières, and I studied at Bradford. And I know this is the MBA Summit, but one of the reasons why I decided to go for Bradford is the vision and that actually goes beyond the MBA program. It's really the vision of the university as a whole. It's touching the MSc program, and it's been mentioned before, elements such as diversity are really, really big on my personal list and are one of the reasons that I chose to come here. And today I stand in front of you to explore the topic of making an impact, creating a legacy and making memories. How do you really do that in this current day and age that is ever changing? I will show you some of my personal examples. I will share how I've done that as a professional in my career, and also trying to show you how that maybe creates best-in-class examples, creates legacies so for the people that you inspire and that you work with, that can build from your personal visions. And I will do so by some examples. And today we are living in an era where things are rapidly evolving. We are part of an era marked by influencers. I need to click myself. Influencers. The definition of legacy has shifted, and meaningful impact is no longer working 40 years at an organization and then receiving a gold watch after you've reached that milestone. It's really about the people that command attention, or that the people that are in the spotlight are the people that drive their own social media channels, that can command attention through their digital presence. And these content creators, whether they are in TikTok or Instagram, they have disrupted traditional media. And one example of somebody who did that is Amir Katabe, and he is a Middle Eastern influencer. He has over 5.3 million followers on Instagram, over 2 million followers on TikTok. And he has become the source of truth for a large part of the Muslim community. And therefore, basically, you can see the shift moving from traditional media outlets, traditional sources, and then making an impact on the community that you're part of. So you see a shift where from globalization to really more localization, despite having 10 years of digitalization. And whilst freedom of speech is more accessible to the public, to everybody around us, I think we all are on social channels, It also presents a risk at the same time, because that's the third bullet here, fake news. And it's, really threatening, I think, our collective memory, where it's very difficult sometimes to realize what is truth and what is actually fiction. We see news on Facebook. We've seen this largely during the pandemic. There were so many fake news items about vaccines, about cures, especially in the beginning. And I think that is a real threat to us. Lastly, one of the biggest developments, I think we spoke about it largely today. We saw a forum on this topic yesterday. It's AI, our silent co-creators. And the AI development, the AI movement is bringing us great things. It's creating music, it's creating poems, it's creating different views, solutions that we haven't thought of, things that solutions or mathematical problems that are solved within seconds. But it's also creating our news feeds. It's predicting our preferences. And we have to navigate this landscape, because if we don't navigate this landscape, it's really difficult to really create our own personal legacy. And how do we ensure that despite all these developments and all these changes in the modern world, we still serve the legacy that we can leave on the triple P, people, planet, and profit. And it begins with ethical development of some of these, of AI and other developments. It's about development of transparent ways of working. It's about commitment to values and principles and to the truth itself. So here we go. As leaders and future leaders, we're all here in this room because we aspire to something. We have also an array of techniques that support our decision making that really help us create new innovative ideas, that put them in practice, and that we can make the world a better place. And that touches the people around us. And I'm going to give you an example from my own experience. So before joining Universal Music, I worked at MSF, Humanitarian NGO. And at an NGO, I was the head of HR. And the way they're structured is they have 5 operating companies. I was responsible for the operating company in Amsterdam. They are serving 26 mission countries. So it means that all policy around compensation and benefits, about contracting, etc., is made centrally. But as you can imagine, that presents a bit of an issue because we're talking about policy in Yemen, DRC, and this example that I'm going to share with you is an example from Afghanistan. And I don't know if you remember, but a couple of years ago, there was the overthrowing of the regime in Afghanistan. So before there was a bit of a moderate regime, and then the Taliban came and took over. At that time, they were introducing some measures, and despite being a global humanitarian NGO, you're not a part from the system, you're part of the system. So it means you have to deal with or adhere to these local rules and regulations. And one of the rules they imposed was that women could no longer travel independently. So it meant that the midwives that we had in our clinics could no longer come to work unless accompanied by a male member of their household. And that meant that they also had to pay for the seat next to them on the bus, because the partner that was accompanying me had to sit there. Would it be fair? Would it really be okay to differentiate giving, for example, travel allowance? To me personally, it's about the impact you make. So either, well, if we had to pay more to these women, we would be discriminating. We would creating a situation where there's unequal pay for the same job, for the same position, for the same work that is delivered. At the same time, we were considering, okay, but what's the impact on not just the people coming to work and the inequality it creates, but also on society? So what is the impact on the broader scope of the planet, if you will? What is the impact on society if women could still go to work, if they could still provide for their families, but also to the women that we would deliver medical care to? They would rather have a female midwife next to their bed than a male one. So the impact that we considered was far beyond than just the people. we decided to pay twice the travel allowance to women to make sure they could actually come to work and they could actually still deliver for the society. But the third P, as you see there, is profit. It would negatively impact our financial balances, of course, because we would spend twice what we would normally spend. Now, in any organization, that would be unspeakable. And that's no different in an NGO. I mean, there are limited funds. It's money that is donated from people, and we're spending it on employee costs, something that you try to keep as low as possible. And you would love to spend most money on your medical intervention. And I'm going to say this was a very difficult couple of conversations internally, because a couple of my colleagues were convinced that we should not support the regime. We should not actually adhere to the rules locally, because we should make a stand and we should protest. Whilst another group said, well, actually, it's going to cost more, then we can deliver less medical care. Therefore, I disagree. And there was a third group as well that said, well, no, actually, maybe we should do it because it impacts society so greatly if these women cannot come to work that that outweighs the cost of doing this. No easy decisions to make. And as I said, in the end, we decided to pay twice the travel allowance. The third, what happens after in Afghanistan was that women could no longer be without the company partner. So we even built like a very beautiful functional waiting room for the male members that they were accompanied by, to make sure they were still allowed to go into work. Another step that made it difficult. Some people view that as unethical, because why would you do that? There are no employees and we're spending money on that. But in the end, looking at the triple P legacy that we want to deliver, that I personally also want to deliver, it's beyond. And that's, I think, the core of what this is about. It is beyond, looking beyond the impact of your decision, or the impact of the decision that you can actually see close by, but look at society as a whole, look at the bigger picture. And I mean, this is maybe a very extreme example. I hope that you don't face examples like this daily, because they cost me a couple of sleepless nights, I'm not gonna lie. But in principle, the decision making that I applied is guided by a couple of principles. And the first one is to have a vision, to be really clear who you are, what you stand for, what your values are in life, and what you want to deliver, and what that builds on the horizons. And if you know that, then you can shape what you're deciding, you can decide your decision making, but also how you guide and coach and steer others. Because that leads to the next step, empowerment. And I think we heard it a couple of times here and there. It's really about getting people behind your vision, empowering them to share what you see, and to actually get them to work in the same way. Because if you leave an imprint on others, that's the memory of the other. They will always treasure that and remember that. And another practical example of that was when I had to do a big restructure, and I had to lay off a couple of people. And one woman really disagreed. There were a couple of other issues. So we had a conversation, and I quite frankly and honestly, maybe somewhat brutally, shared with her how she was perceived in the organization, why she was being let go, and why we would not create a different position for her. And she was speechless, and I felt really horrible having to deliver that message to her. Now, a couple of years later, she called me last week, actually. We spoke about a couple of things, and she thanked me for the career advice she got, because she was not aware of some of these elements. And she felt really empowered after our conversations. Of course, it took a while, a couple of years, but she felt that she had that mirror in front of her that made her feel empowered to take a different direction. She found another job where she had more opportunity to show her talents, and she felt that she was in the best place in life she could possibly be. And I think that's also part of vision. Make difficult decisions, although they are hard conversations. Don't shy away from them, because that's how you create a legacy and the impact on others too. It's really something that maybe you are not always conscious corporate organization. You always need to have certain flexibility to navigate and steer the moments because it's not a straight line. I think Paul showed that example. It's never a straight line. There will be hurdles on the way. Make sure that you feel equipped and adequately flexible to make those changes and adapt yourself to these new environments. I think that's one of my key lessons personally. I worked at an organization in retail and I didn't fit in, but I worked so hard. I worked my ass off. I worked 7 days a week and they still didn't like me because I was not the right person for the role. So I've been at the other side of the table as well, where we had this conversation and we said to each other, look, this doesn't work. I am not the right person for the role. So again, it's about being super clear on who you are, what fits well with your talents, and that is maybe the direction you should take your career in. Needless to say, that also shaped me personally greatly. And I cannot be more grateful for that experience because that really helped me develop to where I am today. Although I didn't like that experience. And lastly, it's about taking accountability. And it's easy to say when you've made a decision and it doesn't work out, yeah, but the team wasn't right. It was not the right moment. No, it's not about that. It's about taking accountability, taking responsibility, and really say, show that you are the example that you say you are. Because I think that's what my personal experience is. A lot of leaders walk the walk, talk the talk, don't do the walk. And I think that's one thing that I've learned throughout my career as well. The managers that had the most impact on me were the ones that actually did before they talked. They set the right example, they showed the way, and they were basically the guiding light for the rest. And that's, I think, if you can combine these three assets or characteristics, I think that would really help create a positive legacy and a positive impact on others. So, and I think, of course, this is a bit of a, maybe for some people, a woolly story. It's maybe not very specific, maybe not very concrete, but you can always look at these elements and underpin this with data. And I think in the era of fake news and influencers, and AI, our legacy isn't set. It's something that we have the unique opportunity to build and influence and shape. We are the architects of the Triple P legacy. We have the opportunity. I spoke to a couple of you that are involved in CSRD development for their corporations at this point in time. And I think that it doesn't matter whether you're in a startup or in the corporate environment. If you can find that opportunity, if you can find that role where you can influence, deliver this vision, empower people, then I think you can go to great lengths and create your own legacy. Thanks.
Could you share something about the CSR experience that you had with implementing them within the university?
Yeah, so I am working at the corporate head office in Hilversum. We have our global head office or operational head office that is in the US. And the first experience is that first you need to connect all the different locations, all the different groups, and to create a similar understanding or similar vision of what CSRD is. Because I think that is, because the legislation leaves it somewhat open, a lot of people have a different understanding of what it is, what the topic is, and therefore it's really difficult to align and empower everybody to deliver the same outcomes. So my experience so far is that we've been working on creating a shared understanding, a shared vision, also the vision of where do we want to take this as a company. And now we need to make sure that we empower the staff locally to actually deliver up to that vision. Yeah, it's quite a big change management role.
Have you ever made, let's say, an impact that you didn't like? Like you did make an impact, but maybe a negative impact?
Yes, of course, many, I guess. They're small. I think there's always conversations where you think I shouldn't have said that, or I should have done this differently. Or I think early on in my career, especially, I was 21 when I graduated here. So I felt that I could, I was at the top of the world. I had a market, nobody could, everybody was less smart than me. So there were managers at times where I thought, you could be in the 21 too much. I know it all, I'm going to tell you. I was working at a manufacturing company in Liverpool, and there was this guy, and he said to me in a very Scouse accent, it's all well and good, but you haven't worked at the docks, you know nothing. And I think I regret being a bit, cocky sometimes. I should have listened better. I should have understood the other person's perspective before I spoke. You have a question? Yeah.
No, just one time back. Thank you for the talk. I'll maybe to repay your question, and I'll invert and say, how do you balance the desire for impact with commercial reality? And what's commercially right for the business?
I think that if you do well, that will come. If you, for example, the music business, it's very competitive. It's very profit driven. And we also talked about the war on talent. And it is really hard for us to recruit the right talent. But we don't pay premiums, one, because that affects the bottom line. But we also don't pay that because we're looking for other characteristics in people. So it's a conscious business decision sometimes to not spend more money. Even though that might cost talent, but at the same time, we see that organizations that are very clear on their principles, it doesn't matter, that the growth will come anyway.
Data search.
Sorry?
What was that, sorry?
Oh, sorry, I was saying it's a big assertion, right? I mean, all comes down to the perception, right? And I think there's two philosophies to the thing around hiring and select for talent. If you take the Netflix model, which was we pay above the market for absolutely the A players, and we, in exchange for that, we expect you to bring yourself up in full person at work. Would you not think that maybe that's more fairer than saying, well, we don't pay you a bit less, but it's because we're selecting for these particular characteristics? To what point is that honestly genuine versus a way of sort of adding context around protecting the bottom line, just being deliberately provocative?
Well, the question is, did they really have the best A-list people out of the market? Well, yeah, maybe for their business, but it doesn't mean that it's. And also I heard other stories as well. I have something more here, but they also made some recruitment mistakes in it, and they reversed the model a little bit currently. And the question is whether.
It's effectively whether when we say that, and I've heard companies say this before, right? It's when we say something along the lines of like, listen, our employees, it's not about paying, like, we don't want to bring people who are only driven by financial compensation. It's about other things. Do you not think that there is an element of sort of, self delusion around protecting the bottom line, that is something we say to make ourselves feel better, so mask the reality that actually we'd like to pay people as less as possible and get the most out of them?
I don't think so. I think, having worked at an NGO, I think there are really a lot of people out there not driven by financial gain. They really get their value, their satisfaction, their worth, their well-being out of other elements than profit. And not just in the NGO sector where I work, but if I look at friends and you look at colleagues, a lot of my friends, if they worked in say, big four consultancy companies, they quit their roles around 30 because they didn't get that purpose. They had the greatest bottom lines, they made profits, and the organization was really good to them. Nevertheless, they didn't find some of the other elements that, for example, their manager didn't give them enough freedom or empowerment. They couldn't find themselves in the vision. And from what I've seen, it's really the four things that I listed were really core to a lot of the people, and maybe not to everyone, of course, but to the majority of the people that I've met. Those things need to be right, otherwise they cannot contribute to that third P.
I think it goes back to something Mohammed was talking about earlier on, you know, and it's sort of motivation class 101. You know, motivation is a complex subject. It isn't one size fits all. Will the people motivated purely by money? But the vast majority of us have a whole range of factors that persuade us to do what we do. And in fact, the evidence is there from probably 100 years of theory, of motivation theory, certainly 80. So yeah, it's but it, you know, it is it's an interesting perspective, and I can't say it hasn't gone through my head to what extent can organisations exploit that willingness of some people to do more for purpose, for the, you know, than they do for money. Is it an opportunity for less well-meaning organisations to exploit? But you know, it's I don't know if it's the right answer to that. Merel, thank you so much for your